just for the purpose of discussing this and taking some action. And I believe there were about 60 people who attended the meeting. And if any of you have been to the city office in Junction, it is a small room. So that was a very good-sized crowd for a meeting there.
Right, yeah.
And there was a great deal of interest and almost unanimous opposition to the project.
So how much say does the city have in something like this moving forward?
Well, what they can do and what they voted to do is to request at TCEQ, our state environmental agency, which has to permit any dams or impoundments on the rivers and streams. They did not learn about this until a very late stage because TCEQ was not required to give notice until after they had completed their review process and done the report on the hydrology and everything else involved with this project. And so this actually began in 2018.
Really?
And nobody in Junction knew about it until about a week ago.
Wow.
Because there had been no public notice and it was kept quiet. So what happened in 2019, LCRA voted to sell water to the project applicant. To me, this is still a strange concept, but it does happen fairly often, is that LCRA is authorized to sell certain quantities of water out of the Llano River if they determine it's available. And so they did that in 2019. Then TCEQ started its review. They recently completed it, and that was the first time they gave public notice that this was in the works. So it is actually a pretty late stage of this project.
Sure, sounds like it. Yeah.
But they are taking public comments right now at TCEQ for anyone who wants to submit a comment. And any member of the public can comment. You don't have to be a landowner on the river or anything like that. And the other thing that can be done is to request a public hearing where citizens can show up and express their views to members of the agency. Yesterday, our state representative, Andy Murr, did request a public hearing.
Oh, wonderful.
And also last night, the City Council in Junction unanimously voted to request both a public hearing in Junction and also what is called a contested case hearing. And that contested case hearings are a little harder to get because you have to demonstrate that you have some personal interest, some way you would be harmed that is different from how the general public might be harmed. And the city of Junction, the strategy they plan to use is that they are owners of a water right since 1965 on the Llano River. They have 1,000 acre feet for use for recreational purposes. And that water right, formally recognized, would be senior to the water right of this applicant.
And so this has come up before. This is there have been attempts made in the past. And have you been involved in any of that?
I am. That is how I became the accidental conservationist. I never intended to be this deeply involved in projects of this nature. In 2006, we had a situation here in Mason where a landowner had applied to construct 2 dams on James River, close to Bat Cave, and create 2 reservoirs. And just to give you an idea, the project in Mason, if it had gone through, would have been much larger. The junction, the one in Edwards County that is currently under consideration is fairly small. It is 12 acre feet of water. The one proposed in Mason was 110 acre feet of water. And this term acre feet is kind of hard to deal with. It is the amount of water that would be required to cover 1 acre of land to a depth of 1 foot. which is about 326,000 gallons. And again, these figures don't seem to mean much. The best way to describe it is 1 acre foot of water is approximately the amount of water that a family of 4 would use during a year.
Okay, good to know. Sure. So what would be the impact, I guess, to Mason if this were to happen, if they are able to proceed?
I think the most important thing is we want to prevent the setting of a bad precedent. It's
agree.
not that this particular small project would necessarily have a huge impact on the river. The more important issue is if this does make it all the way through all the state and federal agencies that had to sign off, this would be the first time that there had been an approval of a private dam on the Llano. And in my view, that would not only embolden other landowners to try this, but it would make it harder for the state agencies to say no to other people after approving this one.
So, I forgot where I was going. I apologize. So I mean, so you're saying that this hasn't been able to happen before, and that this. So what's the timeline? I guess. Oh, I know where I was going. Sorry, let me back up. What does the LCR? Do you know what they look at when they're looking at water? I mean, you said this started in 2018. Well, that was a really wet time for us. We had a lot more water, and then this year, especially with the drought that we're in, do you know how far back they look at the records to see if they want to sell this? If we have water to spare, I suppose.
Well, one thing that TCEQ did when they did the draft permit for this project is there are stream inflow requirements where if the flow of the river drops beyond certain levels that are established through historical records, if it drops below these records, then the property owner would be required to release water back into the river. But this is it would be a completely private pond for purely recreational purposes. And I think people in this area feel very strongly about our rivers and protecting them.
Very much
so these sorts of projects generate a great deal of interest. For those of you who have been reading some about this on Mason Online, there are a few misconceptions that crop up whenever someone wants to dam a river. One of them is they can't do that. It's against the law. If they get all the approvals they need from state and federal government, they can do it because the purpose of the permitting process is to make it legal. So it is something that can happen. The other thing is occasionally people will say, well, this is a private property rights issue. The landowner should be able to do what he wants. This is not a private property rights issue for two reasons. One is in Texas, the state of Texas owns all the surface water in the rivers and the creeks. So the water itself that would be impounded is not private property. The other thing is, I don't know how the old surveys were done in Edwards County, but in Mason County, the state of Texas owns the entire Llano River bed. So for riverfront property owners, your property line goes to the edge of the water, but the river itself the stream bed is public property. And so both the water and the land are public.
So what can folks do? What action? Where do we get involved?
Okay, there is a limited window of time to write to TCEQ and express your opinion of this project. I believe June 11th is the cutoff date for this one. And the easiest way to find it is, again, go to Facebook, Mason Online Community, and do a search for Spider Johnson's post on this, because in the thread under Spider's post, there is a direct link to TCEQ's comments page. And you log in giving the particular water right application number, which is also posted in Spider's thread. And then there you can post your comments online.
Do we have a timeline of a date for Mr. Murr's meeting that he requested, or?
I'm not sure about that, if TCEQ is required to set the public hearing within a certain amount of time, but the main thing is any request for a hearing have to be made within this comment period.
Okay, well, sounds like those have been made. It sounds like that was some really good progress really quickly from the community. It's really nice to see such a swift action from those. Well, we really appreciate you attending Junction's meeting. Is there anything else that you think that we need to be aware of with the situation that maybe we haven't touched on yet?
There is actually, and I never did explain how I became the accidental conservationist. When the situation arose in Mason County in 2006 with the proposed James River dams, I happened to have a good email list of people I thought might be interested. And so I was the one who started sending out information as it became available on what was going on,
Since
what people
Facebook
could do.
it was around then, but it wasn't quite as active as it is these days. So,
Right, right. And then because I was the one sending out the information, people kind of came to see me as the leader of the opposition group. That was not a position I sought. I never intended to get that involved. It was not a position I was qualified for by either education or experience, but by default I became the accidental conservationist. And then because of that, in 2010, I was also appointed to the group that was opposing the large LCRA power lines that were considered being run through Mason County. And I guess the only other thing I would really like to say, Casey, is when we were working on the power line issue, it occurred to me that here in Mason County, and maybe in the region, we really need some kind of conservation network to mobilize people, because whenever these threats come up, there's usually a short time frame for taking action. Everybody flies into a panic. They want to form a new nonprofit group to fight this particular project. And I'm thinking we really just need to have a network in place at all times, so
that sounds wonderful.
When these issues come up, whether it's a threat to the river or any other aspect of our natural beauty in Mason, within minutes we can email hundreds of people, let them know what's going on, advise them what to do. And it's just pure inertia that I have not started this network, but if any of your listeners are interested, it would be a great thing to do.
I think so, and I think there was enough interest on that Facebook thread that it was mentioned that it sounds like it wouldn't be too challenging to get that group together. So if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate your time and you attending these meetings and filling us in. Like I said, I saw this pop up and it was just a little. I have never dealt with anything like this before. I had heard that it happened, at other times, and we're really thankful to have your experience going into this and leading the cause. So thank you.
Well, thanks for letting me speak.
Absolutely. All right, y'all, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back